Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you for being here. Your support means a lot to me and the community that I am building. And this community is something that is definitely needed for a lot of people. So, like I said, your support is definitely very helpful. One of the things I wanted to stop by and let everybody know is that you are not alone in this battle, in this war that we're constantly fighting against, especially mental health issues, anxiety, depression, things of that sort. These things are a constant battle. And I just want to let you know that you are not alone. And you can reach out for help. You know, there used to be a lot of stigma around things like therapy or anxiety or depression or something like that. A lot of people had the belief that, well, you know, all you need to do is like this and just forget about it, or, you know, just don't worry about it. Oh, is that all? Oh, okay. Well, now that you say that, you know, gee, why didn't I think of that, you know? I've gotten that a lot over the years. So you know, I'm here to tell you it's not just in your head, okay? This anxiety and depression are real. And they are things that you are constantly battling against. However, the fact that you are still here and still battling means that you are incredibly strong. And I want you to remember that. I want you to know that just the fact that you are still fighting means that you are very strong. I had a conversation with a friend the other day where she was just like, you know, everybody says that I'm strong, but no, you know, nobody sees how weak I really can be. And I told her, I was like, you know, Brene Brown even says that there can be no courage without vulnerability. You know, the fact that you still fight through those weak points, you know, is amazing, and it is incredibly inspiring to the people around you. That's just it. You know, when people say that you are so incredibly strong, doesn't mean they don't know that you have weak points. It means that despite your weak points, you are still fighting, and you are still out there, putting yourself out there, and you are still like willing to help other people and, you know, talk with other people, and you're still willing to, you know, keep going despite those weak points. You know, I mean, I told her that, yeah, there are some days even that I will take and I will just cry and curl up in a little ball and just sob, you know, and just block everything and everybody out. And then I will sit there, I will stand up, dust myself off, and keep walking. You know, you've got to try. You just got to keep trying and keep going. You are amazing, because despite those points when you're on the ground in a ball crying, you still pick yourself up and keep going and help others and see the light in other people. And, you know, despite your darkness, you have become the light. You know, there's one thing that my daughter told me a long time ago that I will never forget. And I believe she saw it on a meme or something, but she goes, When the darkness is impenetrable, become the light. And I love that. And that's one of the things that I want to encourage people to do is become the light. Now, sometimes in order to do that, you've got to take some time. You've got to take some time to recharge, especially if you're going to become the light. You need to recharge in order to do that. One of the things that I say a lot is you can't pour from an empty cup. And that was thank you to another one of my friends. So sometimes you've got to take the time to actually refill that cup, recharge your light, and keep going, and this, there are going to be the people who are, just like, well, I need you right now. And it's like, do you though? Sometimes you've got to take those times for yourself. It's part of setting boundaries. It's like, well, I think you can figure this one out for yourself. I think you need to, so that you can have that same sense of achievement that I do when I help you figure these things out. One of the things that I've said a lot is, if you keep flying for them, how are they ever going to learn how? And there are going to be those people who are going to be upset with you for a little while because you weren't able to help them right at that moment, and they had to figure it out. The thing is, they will figure it out for themselves, And that'll just make their achievements all the better. It'll make them more accomplished, and let them be upset with you. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that what people think of you has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. I think one of the things that they're upset about is that, they weren't able to figure it out for themselves in the first place. So, sometimes that means that they're not taking the time to actually kind of step back and think things through fully, and that's why they're kind of upset. It's that they get frustrated, not necessarily with you, but with themselves. And the only way that they're going to get faster at figuring these things out is if you let them think it through for themselves. When I'm talking with somebody and, they're getting upset about a lot of different things, one of the things that I've found is helpful is, why? Why are you getting so upset about this? What is the underlying reason to that? And what is it that you're upset about? Because I know you're not really upset with me, but you're upset about something within yourself, and that's another thing that you kind of gotta understand, is that sometimes you cannot take things personally. I mean, especially when dealing with other people, because the fact of the matter is that sometimes you can give as much advice as you possibly can until you're blue in the face, but the fact of the matter is they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. I mean, granted, sometimes you inspire new ideas, which is phenomenal, but there's a lot of times when these are things that they're going to have to figure out for themselves, mainly because you're not there. You're not really able to get into their head and figure out why they haven't done these things before, or, why they're not able to do these things, that you advise them to do. And so, I mean, sometimes it's one of those things that, people can figure out the answer for themselves. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time for them as well. And their urgency and rush and things like that is not good for them either. There are certain situations when we really got to take a step back and actually give it a little bit of time in order to figure these things out. One of the main things when it comes to scams and things like that is that one of the things that they will do, that they are taught to do, is, I need an answer right now, and they won't let you think about it. And that's how they get a lot of people, is that, no, I really need an answer right now. You need to talk to me, keep talking to me, but you need to do this for me right now. And what happens? Either they lose you or you lose everything. Urgency is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, there are some times when you are going to have to think on the fly, but if you have the time to step back, especially when it comes to matters of the heart and matters of mentality, sometimes you really got to take a step back. Don't get scammed. Don't let people push you into something that you're not sure about. Sometimes you gotta just kind of think things through. If it's worthwhile, they will be patient. They will wait for you. If it's not worthwhile, maybe it wasn't meant to be. But you gotta take the time for yourself to know yourself, to really get to know yourself, to get to know exactly what's going on in your head and not what society or, people who are living by archaic values are trying to push into you. I mean, sometimes being able to distance yourself from people is a good thing. Taking a little bit more time for yourself is a good thing. Because that's what's going to get you through. Taking that time to take the deep breath and take the time to, celebrate your achievements and things that you've already lived through. Those are the things that will give you the sense of accomplishment, that will give you that drive to keep going. When you take a deep breath, take a step back and say, you know what? I've been through something very similar to this. All right, I can get through this too, All right, that'll work. Sometimes we need that reminder. We've already been through something similar to this. We lived through it, and you know what? We're probably doing better because of it. Everything happens for a reason, to me. I, especially with everything that I've been through, I have to believe that. Everything does happen for a reason. And you know what? Sometimes I don't need to know the reason. Sometimes I just need to know that everything happens for a reason. And I'm okay with that. It's a point of surrender. Just understanding that things will work out in the end. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes that's really difficult to understand. That things will work out in the end. But the universe does not respond to a lack mentality. So giving over that surrender and saying, you know what, things will work out. They may not work out the way that I want them to necessarily, but they will work out, you know. It's kind of one of those points of like, you know, just like, you know, I've talked to people that have talked to me about like their partner, their spouse or something like that, and it's like, well, how do I make them feel this way? Or how do I get them to understand this? How do I, you know, get them to do this? How do I, you know, and in a sense it's, how do I make them feel this way? If you really think about that, why would you want to make them feel a certain way? It's a point of control. Nobody wants to be controlled. Nobody deserves to be controlled. You know, would you want to be controlled? I know I certainly don't. So instead of thinking, you know, how do I make them feel this way? Maybe it's a point of coming back to yourself and saying, you know what? They might not feel this way, like ever, because that's probably just not who they are. Is that something that I can accept and understand? Is that something that I can live with? And is that something that I want to continue with? And sometimes the answer is, you know what? I think if we could come to a sort of compromise, we might be able to make it work. Sometimes the answer is, you know what? I don't think I can do that. I honestly feel like I deserve better. And I like that answer. But sometimes a compromise is warranted, you know, especially if it's something that you truly want this person. Maybe they just might have a few little like rough edges to them and stuff like that. But sometimes in that case, you'd be surprised what you miss. I know there are certain things about Greg, Russell, Dusty, Taz, that when they were still here just like irked me to no end. You know? But these days I'd give anything to hear or see or feel that way again. So, on that note, I hope everybody has a really good week, and I hope and weekend, and I will see you guys next time. And remember, be good to yourself, okay? You do deserve it. Thank you.